Imagine it's 15th August 1971. You are a 42-year-old tool and die worker living in Detroit, United States. Your house is a small brick place with a cracked driveway, a swing set in the yard, and a kitchen radio that comes on before sunrise. You keep $100 in a savings account, folded insurance papers in a drawer, and a coffee tin full of coins above the fridge for emergencies. Every Friday, your paycheck covers the mortgage, groceries, church giving, and a little extra for the kids' school shoes. You are not rich, but you feel solid, like a man standing on poured concrete instead of sand. If you have ever wondered why a dollar can stay familiar while buying less and less of your life, stay with me. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is a pattern. It has happened before in different countries under different flags, and it almost never announces itself with a siren. And if you find value in this kind of historical clarity, subscribing takes 2 seconds. It keeps you ahead of what most people never see coming. That night, President Richard Nixon appears on television. He tells the country he is suspending the dollar's convertibility into gold, freezing wages and prices for 90 days, and adding a new import surcharge. The words sound technical. They do not sound like the start of a long theft. The next morning, the milkman still comes. The factory whistle still blows. Your bankbook still shows the same number of dollars. But the measuring stick has changed, quietly, deep underneath the floorboards. And over the decades that follow, the US dollar will lose almost all of the buying power it had in 1913. Prices that once fit in a shirt pocket begin to demand a wallet, then a card, then a second income. This video is about that hidden erosion, not the loud kind with wheelbarrows of cash, but the slow kind that can hollow out a middle class. Before we go further, there is something important to understand. Money is not wealth. Money is a claim on wealth. It is a ticket. The house, the bread, the hour of labor, the barrel of oil, the doctor's visit, the pair of shoes. Those are the real things. The dollar is the coupon you hand over to get them. Now imagine a ruler that gets a tiny bit shorter every year. While the table you are measuring stays the same size, if you trust the ruler, the table seems to grow. But the table did not change. Your ruler did. That is what inflation does when it becomes a long habit rather than a short shock. It changes the measuring stick. A paycheck can be larger in number and smaller in meaning at the same time. The core mechanism is simple. When governments spend more than they can honestly raise, and central banks allow the supply of money and credit to grow too fast. When the public keeps trusting the currency anyway, each unit of money tends to buy a little less. Credit means borrowed spending pulled from the future into the present. It can feel like prosperity at first, like a bright coat of paint can make a rotting fence look new. But if more claims are created than output, the paint does not fix the wood. This is why people often miss the full truth. They experience inflation in fragments, not as a whole. Rent rises in 1 year. Food jumps the next. Insurance creeps up after that. A used car costs more. College costs more. Childcare costs more. But because the pain comes as drizzle, not thunder, people adapt instead of revolt. In 2022 alone, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said the purchasing power of the dollar fell about 7.4% from the year before. That was obvious. What is less obvious is the long river underneath it. From 1913 to 2025, official CPI data rose from 9.9 to 321.9. That means the same basket of everyday goods cost roughly 32 times more. In plain English, a dollar kept from 1913 buys only a few cents now. The bill looks the same. The life it can command does not. This brings us directly to the first part of the story. The United States did not lose purchasing power in one grand collapse. It lost it like a shoreline loses land to the sea. One ordinary wave at a time until a child returns as an adult and realizes the beach is half gone. When Nixon closed the gold window on August 15, 1971, he was responding to a world already straining under too many dollars. Under Bretton Woods, foreign governments could exchange dollars for U.S. gold at $35 an ounce. By the 1960s, there were more dollars abroad than the United States had gold to honor at that price. Military spending, foreign aid, domestic programs, and easy credit had swollen the pile. The system looked solid from the front porch. Inside, the beams were bending. So Washington chose flexibility over discipline. The dollar became purely fiat money. This means money backed by government decree and public trust rather than a fixed link to gold. On the same night, Nixon froze wages and prices for 90 days. That made the policy look like medicine. In truth, it was more like taping over a warning light on a car dashboard. The engine was still overheating. At first, many Americans did not feel alarmed. The 1970s were not Weimar Germany. People were not hauling money in carts. Shelves stayed stocked. Paychecks still arrived. That is exactly why this case matters. It shows how a currency can lose enormous real value without the kind of drama that makes history books. In 1964, inflation in the United States was about 1%. By March 1980, it was close to 15%. The average CPI stood at $48.05 in 1971. By 1980, it had climbed to 82.4. In less than a decade, the price level roughly doubled. Think about what that meant at the kitchen table. A family with cash and savings discovered the account was a bathtub with the drain open. The water level looked calm. The value leaked away underneath. A worker might get a raise and still fall behind. A retiree living on fixed income was squeezed like someone walking up an escalator that had quietly reversed direction. Then came the oil shocks of 1973 and 1979. Energy is not just one item on a receipt. It is a ghost inside almost everything. It moves trucks, powers factories, heats homes, and feeds fertilizer plants. When oil surged, the higher cost spread like dye through water. Prices rose. Wages chased them. Businesses raised prices again. Economists call that a wage price spiral. In plain English, everyone ran faster just to stay in the same place. Ordinary Americans adjusted in ways that tell more than charts do. Families bought smaller cars. Homemakers clipped more coupons. Workers demanded cost of living adjustments. Mortgage rates climbed into terrifying territory. By the time Paul Volcker slammed on the brakes, the federal funds rate hit 20%. That is the interest rate banks use for overnight lending, but it spills into everything else. It was like stopping a train by throwing steel beams onto the tracks. The train slowed, but not gently. The recession of 1981 and 1982 was brutal. And this is the part many people still miss. The dollar did not have to die to lose most of its value. It only had to live long enough inside a system that chose more credit over restraint. According to official inflation data, prices rose from a 9.9 in 1913 to 321.9 in 2025. That is not a sudden explosion. It is a century-long thinning. A dollar did not vanish. It was shaved, flake by flake, until the pile on the floor became a way of life. Here is something I want you to think about. If your paycheck rises, but the money buys less, are you getting richer or running on a treadmill? Drop your answer in the comments. Seriously. Because what I am about to show you next is the part most people never hear. This leads to the second part of this story. When people hear money can lose its value, many imagine the extreme case of Germany 1923. Wheelbarrows, panic, absurd price tags. It feels too dramatic to be relevant, but it lets you see the machinery with the panels removed. Beginning in the fall of 1922, Germany slid from bad inflation into hyperinflation. This means prices rising so fast, money becomes old instantly. The roots went back years. During the First World War, the German government printed heavily rather than taxing to pay for war. Between 1914 and 1918, money in circulation roughly quintupled. After the war came reparations and political chaos. In 1923, after falling behind on payments, the French and Belgian occupation of the Ruhr began. Berlin backed a general strike. 2 million workers received support while producing far less. More paper, fewer goods, like adding tickets to a raffle while removing prizes. The exchange rate tells the story with cold cruelty. In 1918, $1 bought 4.2 marks. By 1921, it bought 75. By 1922, it bought 400. In January 1923, it bought 7,000. By July, it bought 160,000. In August, 1 million. On November 1st, 1923, $1 bought 1.3 billion marks. On November 16th, it bought 4.2 trillion. But exchange rates are still abstract until you walk into a store. Potatoes cost 50,000 marks one day and 100,000 the next. Journalist Sebastian Hafner wrote that people who had savings in a bank saw their value disappear overnight. Artist George Graz described how waiting at a shop window was costly because a rabbit might become millions of marks more expensive. Money had become not a tool, but a burden. It was heavier to carry than the goods it bought. Hyperinflation did not hurt everyone at the same speed. Debtors could sometimes escape by paying back debt with ruined money. But pensioners, savers, clerks, and teachers were crushed. Their lives had been built on promises written in numbers. When the numbers dissolved, the promises dissolved with them. The middle class was rubbed out like chalk in rain. The state did not intend to create billion-mark bread. It kept trying to solve problems with the same tool that made them worse. More printing to cover costs. More paper to calm the panic created by the last wave of paper. A snake swallowing its own tail. Germany finally stopped the spiral in late 1923 by introducing the Rentenmark, restricting money creation and imposing discipline. By then, the damage was moral and political. A society that trusted savings learned that all of them could evaporate. Hyperinflation left a scar that outlived the banknotes. Money fails first as a measuring stick, then as a store of value, and only later as a medium of exchange. In America, the ruler shortened slowly. In Weimar Germany, it snapped in half. Different speed, same principle. Too many claims, too little discipline. Public trust stretched past the point of honesty. Argentina in 2001 and 2002 did not look like Weimar Germany. It looked modern. Bank branches, ATMs, television economists. A middle class believed it had escaped inflation by tying the peso to the dollar 1-for-1. That peg looked like salvation. But a fixed exchange rate is like holding a door shut while pressure builds. Argentina slid into recession in 1998. Brazil devalued in 1999. Capital fled. Debt piled up. The peg, once a shield, became a trap. The crisis moved in slow motion. Then came the Corralito in December 2001. Withdrawal limits were imposed on bank accounts, capped at 250 pesos a week. Imagine opening your banking app and discovering your savings are legally yours but practically behind glass. You can look, but you cannot eat. People flooded the streets. Riots broke out. Supermarkets were looted. The deposit freeze trapped 40 billion and tossed millions into poverty. The government defaulted, and then the peg collapsed. Output fell 20% over 3 years. The peso sank to $3.90 per dollar. Unemployment climbed beyond 20%. Families learned a bank deposit is not money in your hand. It is a promise from a system. When cornered, promises are frozen. Argentines developed a habit of keeping dollars in mattresses and walls. Distrust became a household technology. The country tried to solve a confidence problem with a promise while leaving fiscal weakness underneath. Trust cracked. The winners moved savings abroad early. The salary earner who trusted the bank paid the heaviest bill. Argentina shows the middle stage. First, the numbers stop meaning what they used to, then the institutions wobble, then access is political. Most people will keep trusting systems they do not understand. If you're still here, hit subscribe. All of these cases share the same mechanism. In the US, it was slow. In Weimar, it was absurdly fast. In Argentina, it was a bank trap. First, a society makes more claims on the future than the real economy can support through war, welfare, or cheap credit. Second, instead of forcing adjustment, leaders delay. Delay is seductive. The burden is pushed forward. Third, the currency absorbs the strain, sometimes through steady inflation, sometimes through devaluation or financial repression. Ordinary people were the last to be told the truth. The price system told it first. Gold told it. Store shelves told it. Official language always arrived late with soothing words like temporary measures or stabilization package. Money is trust made visible, and trust can be spent. A state can borrow trust from the future, but one day the bill arrives. Lebanon after 2019 is a brutal modern example. People watched balances on screens while being locked out in real life. The Lebanese pound lost 90% of its value. Poverty jumped from 28% to 55%. Extreme poverty rose to 23%. A woman entered a Beirut bank with a toy gun to demand $13,000 from her own account for her sister's cancer treatment. Think about how broken a system must be before citizens stage hostage dramas for their own medicine money. Trust turned feral. Greece in 2015 showed similar fear. Banks closed. Capital controls limited withdrawals to 60 euros a day. Lines formed at ATMs. A number on a screen can become a rumor very quickly. The poor are hurt by prices. The middle class is hurt by broken promises. Inflation acts like a tax collector with no face. By the time people understand it, they are choosing between different kinds of loss. In America, slow erosion pushes both parents into the labor force and makes housing feel unreachable. It is dry rot in the floor. Median household income rose on paper, but after inflation, the real gain was tiny. This is the hidden tax of a shrinking ruler. Survivors shared 3 traits. They understood assets versus money, they kept flexibility, and they distrusted single points of failure. Some debtors benefit by repaying with cheaper money. Inflation is redistributive, moving wealth from savers to others. The Detroit worker turns off his TV in 1971. He does not know his trusted dollar will become a weaker claim on the world. Currency decline is too slow to trigger panic and too steady to ignore. It hides behind bigger nominal wages and stock gains. Money only works as well as the discipline behind it. When limits weaken, the loss arrives in prices and social trust. This is historical and educational analysis, not financial advice. Consult a professional before making any financial decision. This video is not for everyone. If someone in your life needs to hear this, share it. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.